So I was going to say, sorry, there's so many things dealing with this morning. And it's saying that one thing that a reminder to you, to reminder more to myself, is that all of us, right now, it's helpful to remember, the situation we're facing now is causing all our strong points and our weak points, to come up very quickly and very easily. Our strong points, our weak points, they are triggered very quickly and very easily. And it's good for all of us to remember that, especially when we hear something from people, someone that we don't like. It's helpful to remember, like all of us are in unusual kind of emotional states. We could seem to do very well, and suddenly, 180-degree turn in one moment. Because, things are just, on the surface and exploding. So means, we have to give more space. Again, reminder to myself. So frankly, I was also dealing with a couple of people complaining about, something that is offered freely, that they weren't able to get it, then, sending messages like, is this compassion? Is this, and then then of course it gets me like, what, how can you be so unreasonable? This is offered freely, whoever responds first knows how to respond. Yes, I cannot help you with your technological problems. There's a limit of what I can do, Then they're very angry, So of course I especially, like to think of myself being a Buddhist teacher, I don't want to be called, you're not compassionate, you are not, how you're not practicing loving kindness, you're not giving me what I want, And then I have to remind myself, everyone is, trying their best, some, so things, get kind of triggered, very quickly and very easily. And then sometimes, we also try to fix it, We also want to fix very quickly, but I remember His Holiness one time making a comment saying, no, leave it alone, And then, my too clever mind, sometimes I say, leave it alone, that means you don't want to deal with it, I have all kinds of psychology, talk, like this and that. But again, after a long term, I see that, His Holiness knows what he's talking about, leave it alone, because in that moment, this person it's flaring, and even if you try to pour a bucket of water to cool down these flames, then they will blame you for freezing them, So then it's not helping, even if you try to solve the problem immediately, it cannot be solved. So better leave it alone. There's a lot of wisdom there, and leaving it alone, it means, give it space, right? We talk about this so much, oh, give it space, right? And of course, also, I say, I've mentioned before, there's also a difference between giving it space and spacing out. Spacing out, it's like what you could call bypassing, right? So this have become a very popular expression among spiritual people these days. Spiritual bypassing. Yeah, it's very real. That in more traditional Buddhist talk, we call this, in Zen, they call it makyo. Ma is like demonic, Mara states. So Mara states, states of deception that can come up, So we can kid ourselves and think, oh, I'm being spacious, when in fact you are bypassing what we call, right? But that notwithstanding, there's also a lot of wisdom in whenever we are faced with something that we don't like, especially those of us who are very impatient, like we like to think, we're very efficient types, we want to nip it in the bud, we want to get it done, sometimes, that is just neurotic energy. So that best to just, as His Holiness said, just leave it alone. Don't answer, he says. we some of us who work more closely with him, like on more technical things. I'm not saying I have any kind of special treatment. It's just like more technical things, like correspondence, this and that. Again, and then it's helps me to see, even someone like His Holiness, people write and complain and say all sorts of things, because they're angry, they're disappointed, And His Holiness like, just leave it alone. I was like, but they want an answer, He was like, don't answer. Said, oh. Then in that moment, then me and some of his secretaries, of the different languages, Tibetan secretary, Indian secretary, Chinese secretary, we'll compare notes, I'm confessing to you, we'll be like, well, he says don't answer. What should we do now? And you're like, yeah, this person is really upset. We have to say something. Almost, I can tell you always, if we get too clever and we try to do the opposite of what His Holiness says, then we will see, like, we were foolish. I can say none of us is doing this out of disrespect for His Holiness. I think it's healthy also. That we question, right? To be clear, this current situation, this morning I'm dealing with, has nothing to do with His Holiness. I'm just sharing with you how working for him, I'm learning, so much, not just from the throne, from just the way he deals with, And then also, we compare, we're like, wow, we know that other tradition, that lineage, they deal things with things this way or that way, but then, we get to see, the way that His Holiness teaches us, it's like, just don't pay attention, don't answer, just ignore. It's like, what? Just ignore, Yeah, because it's true, because in that moment, we don't have the skill to respond. And then even when we have the skill to respond, the person doesn't have the conditions to accept the response. It's like, wow, yeah. Even in Buddha's life, people came and yelled at him and screamed at him, and he did not say a word, And they got so angry, they walked away, Then Ananda will say, why didn't you explain? I even know, what that situation was, I could have said something. I mean, Ananda didn't say that, but you kind of get a sense, And Buddha said, no, not the right time, Not the right time. And anything you say or do is just going to. Anyway, good morning, welcome back. We continue in our Gongchik studies. I want to remind everyone, we record our teachings, our study group, and we post it on YouTube as soon as we can. So also be patient. And sometimes, even though we thought we recorded it, then it turns out we did not. And we're all doing this as volunteers. We all have things that we have to do. We seemingly, don't have many things to do. But in fact, right? Who wants to post, right, a list of what we have to do on Facebook? you know, and so appearances are deceptive, so we all are trying, do what we can. So just, understand that. And but generally, we've been good. Jasper particularly has been good at making sure that these recordings are downloaded from the cloud and then uploaded onto YouTube, properly marked and identified. So I so appreciate all the help that I'm getting in doing this and many other things that we're doing. Things that we tell people, things that we don't tell people. There's, and I'm sure all of you are also, in varying degrees doing that. We have so far only been looking at the introduction provided by Sobish, the author and translator of this big volume called The Buddha's Single Intention. So this book is available from Wisdom Publications directly. And then also in some countries you can get through Amazon, in some countries you cannot. And so we're finding ways to try to get this book to anyone who wants a copy of this book. My experience with Amazon, and I think like right now, is that when they say this is going to take longer and they'll give you a date that is like 2 weeks more than usual, even if you have Prime. At least my own experience, again, don't get angry if it turns out your experience is not going to be like this, is that I found that they actually arrive, a lot sooner. I think they're just anticipating problems, and again, knowing customers will get upset. They warn and say, oh, this is going to be delayed for 3 weeks, and then 3 days later it gets here. At least my experience so far. I can only speak to what I'm experiencing. So as well, don't let that deter you. If you're thinking order from Amazon and it says, oh, it's going to be delayed, it might actually come sooner. Might. Who knows? Uncertain. Yeah. But meanwhile, I will continue to, take pictures of the pages that we are going to be looking at. So these pages would probably be good for the rest of this week, actually. So last time we met, I said, even though we have not finished the introduction by Sobish, the translator, we're not going to continue to go through that. You can read it yourself. And that we're going to go to the text itself, the commentary itself. So to remind you, this book consists of an influential commentary called Light of the Sun. Light of the Sun. I'm going to use the Tibetan name. It's easier, shorter. It's called Nima Nangwa. So try to remember this name. So some names, maybe you should write this down as terms that you remember, so that I don't have to keep going, oh, you remember? It is this. Oh, remember? It's that. It actually, it adds up, It takes up time. It takes up effort, strength. So it's so some names you should know. So Gongchik, of course, is one. That's the single intention. Mostly I'm going to call it Gongchik. And way back I explained, why that I prefer to just call it Gongchik. That single intention doesn't capture the whole range of meanings in this title, Gongchik. So Gongchik is one. Then the two oldest commentaries is called Dorshema, D-O-R-S-H-E, Dorshema, Dorshema, and Rinjangma, R-I-N-J-A-N-G, Ma, M-A. R-I-N-J-A-N-G, Rinjangma. So Gongchik, Dorshema, Rinjangma. Then the commentary that is translated here is called Nima Nangwa. N-Y-I-M-A, Nima, Nangwa. N-A-N-G, N for Netherlands, N-A-N-G, Wa, W-A, Nima Nangwa. Gongchik, Dorshema, Rinjangma, Nima Nangwa. Okay? The author of Nima Nangwa is Rigzin Choki Drakpa, or Choda. Rigzin Choda. Let me take the title page of this commentary, and I'm going to send it through WhatsApp. Yeah. I know some of you are using your phone for this, and so I apologize that this wasn't sent earlier. So this is Light of the Sun, detailed exposition of the excellent Dharma, the Gongchik, a well-expressed clarification of the meaning of the scriptures by Rigzin Choki Drakpa. Tibetan names, often when you contract it, when you shorten it, you know, like Timothy becomes Tim, right? Matthew is Matt. Tibetan names, Choki Drakpa, you contract that to Chodrak, first syllable of each, Chodrak. Like my Dharma name is, in short, Konjo Yedor, Y-E-D-O-R, Yedor, is short for Yeshe Dorje, Yedor. So this Choki Drakpa, Chodrak, Rigzin Chodrak. So composed in 1633. Yeah. Now Gongchik, if you remember, was collected together, put together, edited, you know, compiled. That's a good word, compiled. Gongchik was compiled within the 10 years of the passing of Jigten Sumgön. So now, names, you want to remember. Jigten Sumgön, Jikten-Sumgon, founder of Drigung Kagyu. Gongchik is his teachings, so Jigten Sumgön. Or sometimes I will refer to him as Kyopa Rinpoche, K-Y-O-B-P-A, Kyopa Rinpoche. So these are two names, Jigten Sumgön, Kyopa Rinpoche, same person. Okay, so now first name of text, write it down so that you remember what they are. Then names of people, you're going to hear a lot about Kyopa Rinpoche or Jigten Sumgön, of course. Then you will also hear Sherab Jungne. Sherab, S-H-E-R-A-B, Jungne, J-U-N-G-N-E. J-U-N-G-N-E, Sherab Jungne. Sherab Jungne is the one who compiled Gongchik. And Sherab Jungne was the nephew of Jigten Sumgön. So within 10 years of the passing of Jigten Sumgön, he compiled Gongchik. Then his brother wrote the Rinjangma commentary. And his student wrote the Dorshema commentary. Another name is, of course, Chodra, or Choki Drakpa, Rigzin Choki Drakpa, the author of Nima Nangwa. So that name you'll hear a lot too. Then another name you'll hear a lot, who is not a Drigung figure, is Sakya Pandita, which is one of the great masters of Tibetan Buddhism of the Sakya lineage, Sakya Pandita. And in short, in this book, he is going to be referred to as, again, a contraction. Sakya Pandita becomes Sapan, S-A-P-A-N, Sapan. Sapan, Sakya Pandita. Sapan. And Sapan turns up a lot because in the Nimanangwa, Chodra is going to respond to the critiques of Sapan towards the Gongchik. So Sapan actually lived. Sapan was a contemporary of Sherab Jungne. So that means one generation younger than Jiten Sungan, but same generation as Sherab Jungne. In fact, Sakya Pandita and Sherab Jungne were friends. And Dharma, exchanged dharmas. They had a close relationship, but their viewpoint is very different. The way they understand the Buddha Dharma, very different. So Sakya Pandita actually wrote what he felt to be the errors expressed in the Gongchik. So he wrote this text called Clear Differentiation. In there, not only Gongchik, many Kadampa things that he did not like, he took to task. Many Nyingma ideas he did not like, he took to task. Then many other ideas he did not like, or interpretations he did not like, he saw as wrong, he also took to task. It was unclear, some of these, who they are. But clearly, some you can clearly tell, he is responding to Gongchik. So because of that, Chodra, a few hundred years later, feels obliged to publicly respond to Sakya Pandita's critiques. Some people feel this was a mistake. That Chodra responded a few hundred years later. Some people feel it's a mistake. And this is related to what we've been talking about. That it's a mistake because even though the Gongchik wasn't meant to be studied and mastered and debated the way that the scholarly tradition, the Pandita tradition of Sakya Pandita, or rather, the Gongchik is not the kind of material that is meant to be studied, scrutinized, and debated the way that the Pandita tradition does it. Therefore, to respond is to, you could say, agree to terms of engagement that wasn't the terms of engagement that surrounds, right, the production of Gongchik. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, as in I gave the analogy of there's tennis and there's golf, we would not even think of subjecting, right, golf to tennis rules or tennis to golf rules. So even if superficially they are both games and involve, a ball being hit, so to enter the fray, so to say, and to respond to Sakya Pandita, some say, it's kind of a mistake, because then you start debating things that, that are kind of unnecessary, point, or even misleading. But, it is what it is, Nimanangwa does respond. And so, as Sobish points out, he says, although Nimanangwa does respond to these criticisms or attacks or critiques from the Pandita tradition, it still contains a lot of the original flavor of the Gongchik tradition, meaning the Gongchik rules of engagement. Yeah. So these are some of the names that we want to remember, the names of texts and the names of individuals. The names of texts would be Gongchik, Dorshema, Rinjangma, and Nimanangwa. Names of individuals, Jigten Sumgun or Kyoba Rinpoche, Sherab Jungne, Sapan or Sakya Pandita, and Rigzin Choda or Rigzin Chokidrakpa. So these are the two lists of names. Then very briefly, between Dorshema and Rinjangma, Dorshema seems more concerned to show how these vajra statements are in agreement with the Buddha's teachings. And so Dorshema tended to, in a way you could say Dorshema tended to be more defensive. That it feels a need to say, yes, although this statement at first look seems contrary to the commonly accepted interpretation by everyone else, in fact, it is not. And here are quotations that I have found from the ancient texts that show that this is reason, and this is the right interpretation. This is not wrong. Dorshema has more of that flavor. Rinjangma, on the other hand, seems unconcerned. So you could say, in some ways, Rinjangma may be more self-assured, of the tradition of Gongchik. And Rinjangma seems to have been composed more for those who already accepted the authority of the Gongchik. Whereas Dorshema seems to be, addressing doubts, among those who have accepted, but still, because other people are murmuring, then you say, oh, maybe it is not. So then Dorshema tries to show, using quotes and reasoning, like, oh, actually, no, it's not. So it seems like Dorshema and Rinjangma, in a way, you could see them as working hand in hand. One is to provide actual instructions on how to take these statements into one's own practice. And the other one is to dispel any doubts that might arise due to murmurings or criticisms of other people. That in the end is for the use of someone who already fundamentally accepts the teachings of Gongchik as valid. Whereas in contrast, Nimanangwa probably was written to try to convince those who are not yet convinced as well. Stronger. Not just that it was written to convince others. It's also, Nimanangwa still has that flavor of supporting those who accept the Nimanangwa, that accept the Gongchik, and want to deepen their understanding of Gongchik. Yeah. So is this clear? Now, the pages that I have given you, you might notice that it's the first statement of chapter 1 and the first statement of chapter 6, correct? Right? And there's a reason for doing that. So now go to page 519. And the reason is given there. Sobish, in the notes, he explains. So the structure of this translation is Sobish first would translate the Nimanangwa. So statement by statement. in a statement followed by Nimanangwa commentary. So in each statement and the commentary, after that, Sobish will have a section called notes. So you see on page 19, right? Notes, 6.1. There, he is giving us some help in understanding what the commentary is saying by bringing in Dorshema and Rinjangma. Yeah? So let's look at 6.1 notes, because that, okay, look there. It says, it is noteworthy that this vajra statement appears at the very beginning of the Rinjangma and the Paris manuscript of the Dorshema. A Paris manuscript refers to an actual physical text of the Dorshema that is very old. It's kept in Paris now in one of the libraries. This is like one of the oldest copies of the Dorshema. So Sobish tells us, in the Paris manuscript of the Dorshema, what is now chapter 6 was actually chapter 1. And all editions of the Rinjangma also has chapter 6 as chapter 1. So in other words, there were in fact even variations in the way that these chapters were arranged. Even the root text wasn't completely frozen or stabilized. There are different ways of arranging them. Moving on. In modern times, the present vajra statement has sometimes been portrayed, never mind, this one is some other issue. We can look at that later. yeah, this discussion is for later. So anyway, so in fact, in the order of the chapters that we have right now, I have to take another picture of the table of contents so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, let me send. If you go to table of contents, this arrangement of the chapters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 main chapters, and then the 8th one is a supplement. You see the vital points of the Dharma wheel, vital points of dependent origination, the Vinaya Pratimoksha, the training of the Bodhisattvas, the observance of mantra awareness holders, view, practice, and conduct, the resultant state of Buddhahood. So these are the main 7 chapters. Yeah? So in modern editions of Gongchik, in root text, and also in Nimanangwa, this is the order of the chapters. But in the Rinjangma and in the earliest copy of Dorshema that we have, so in that sense you could say fairly certain, maybe at the earliest point when Sherab Jungne first publicized this compilation, what is now chapter 6 was given as chapter 1. What is now given as chapter 6 was given as chapter 1. There is some significance to this, actually. It has to do with What is the emphasis? What is the emphasis? So the content of the 3 turnings of the Dharma wheel, or the vital points of the Dharma wheel, right? The content of what is now chapter 1, in contrast to the content of what is now chapter 6, yeah? You could say that chapter 1 is more focused on a concern with theory. Like the principles involved, in that sense, theory. The principles involved in understanding the relationship between all the different teachings that the Buddha gave. So that's what that reference to the Dharma wheel, because there are 3 turnings of the Dharma wheel. Generally, we say that. Right? So then the content of chapter 1 is more concerned about showing how all these different teachings, they all have a single intention, Gongchik. They are all pointing to the one fundamental nature. So chapter 1 is given for us to get an understanding of how all the different teachings that sometimes might seem contradictory are actually unified. So in that sense, it is more focused on theory. Whereas chapter 6, this chapter on view, practice, and conduct, it is more focused on practice. Because here, the schema of view, practice, and conduct, even though view is, you could say, about theory, right? But even there, the schema is fundamentally for figuring out how to practice. That your practice or your meditation and your conduct have to follow from your understanding of what is the problem and what is the solution. So chapter 6 is more concerned about the practice side of things. Chapter 1 is more concerned about gaining the correct understanding of all the different teachings. So the older arrangement, where 6 is 1, again points us back to the original spirit that we've been talking about, which is more concerned about practice than about, right, theory. For sure, there are weak points that we can point to with this approach, especially when you get confused as to what practice is about. So in a way, it's true, you know, like Gagyupas are not very educated overall. They don't have very sophisticated learning, mastery of Indian commentaries of, you know, very difficult tantric topics. Gagyupas, and then particularly Drigum Gagyupas, are very weak there. Then the general population, then practice just turns into doing rituals. Practice, even like retreat practice, can turn into just accumulating mantras, counting mantras. Oh, I've done 100,000 that. Oh, I've done 600,000 of that. Oh, I've done, you know. That's when it goes wrong, and it can go wrong. Whereas those traditions that emphasize like learning and knowing and understanding. They can also go wrong, right? When that goes wrong, then it becomes very rigid. What is a prescription given by Buddha to be applied becomes an idol, becomes a false god itself, so that people worship, so to say, the prescription and turn it into like a god of its own. It is exactly like this. It is just like this. This is how. There are 3 of these. And for each of the 3, the first one can be divided into 4 further parts. Second one into 7 parts. Third one into 2 parts. And the 2 parts have subdivisions further, you know. What was given as a grid to overlay on reality to help us see certain things is mistaken as part of the nature of reality. So that all that learning becomes a cage, another cage, maybe golden cage, but cage nonetheless, then become more rigid. So both sides, you know, we can go wrong easily. But in the early Kagyu, and generally that Kagyu flavor is to emphasize practice. So you can even see in the evolution of the Gongchik text that in the earliest part, probably Sherab Jungne put the content of what is now chapter 6 into chapter 1. And what is chapter 1 is delegated to further down. We should not make too much of these differences, except to just be aware, you know, like there are these, you know, interesting differences. So before we go into the details of these 2 statements, let's just look at the statements themselves. So page 49, Vajra statement, chapter 1, statement 1. The statement is, all the teachings of the Buddha reveal the original state of the fundamental nature. In contrast, the first statement of what is now chapter 6, what does it say? It says, he taught, he as in Jigten Sumgon, Kyopa Rinpoche, taught that the Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. Meaning, Dharma that comes to us through a lineage, through a succession of teachers and disciples. The Dharma that comes to us in this way is truly marvelous and profound. So again, I hope you can see, you know, like the 2 concerns behind these 2 verses are somewhat different. You could say that what is now statement 1 in chapter 1, again, is more concerned about how do you understand all these teachings. And statement 1 of chapter 6 is, how do you practice? Once you talk about lineage, you're talking about a living tradition. That the practice that you establish based on being connected to a living tradition, which is basically what this statement is saying, right? The practice that you establish in your own life, if it is connected to a living tradition, then it really has blessings and is really profound. Now, this is interesting because I think many of us even have the view that, oh, what is most original, most close to the Buddha is most profound and most authentic, right? We'll say, oh, for 2,000 years it has passed down. So it's been corrupted. You could say the whole Protestant Reformation is based on that idea. And maybe if you go back to the time of Luther, you can say, yeah, the church became so messy, and then Luther says, let's go back to the main text of our tradition. Let's go back to that. Because, in the interval, right, all sorts of crazy things have been added to it. Again, I can tell you, I can appreciate that idea. But we should also try to see what is being said here. What is being said here, it's not like what is being said here is said, oh, absolutely no corruption. Elsewhere, you'll see how Judaism is concerned about, corruption of the teachings, things that are mistakenly added and all of that. But what he's saying here is that the fact that it has come down all the way to us demonstrates that it has been tested and it has been verified as relevant to be continued to now. It's tried and tested and confirmed. And not only that, and so this gives us a different perspective about, and this perspective I think is based on trusting, like if this was done with sincerity, then even if there might be new things added, they are coming from the right place. So in other words, it's saying, don't see these additions that have come down to us as corruptions, but rather understand that this is taking into consideration the human struggles with the teachings. Everything is dependent on origination. Teachings given by Buddhas, teaching received by sentient beings, right? And when these two come together, that which is actually effectively digested is what comes down to us as nourishment. So that you might think, oh, I want the original transmission. I want to go back to right when this Dharma from Buddhas are given. I want to take that. But here it's saying, you might not be able to digest it. Because the Dharma given by Buddhas have not yet, been kind of integrated into the struggling experiences of sentient beings. So related to this idea is Milarepa saying, he said to his students late in his life, he said, you have seen, how hard I lived as a practitioner and how difficult my Dharma life has been. How much difficulties that I went through. And then he said to them, but Do not be disappointed. Do not be discouraged. Because what I'm telling you is, because I went through all these difficulties, then my spiritual descendants, they do not have to go through the same difficulty that I went through. So what he's saying is, like, he has digested this. Then he is passing it on to us. So the unity of Dharma and person that is in Milarepa is what is being transmitted when we talk about lineage transmission. Now, as long as that continues, and that comes down to us, then that is the true blessing. Then that is the truly why this statement says, the Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. It is said that this statement is in response to, so above that statement it says, some claim the dharmas that appear without transmission lineage, and earth teachings, space teachings, treasure teachings, to be profound and amazing. He says, but no, that which comes to us through a long line of human beings, like sincere human beings struggling with these teachings, wrestling with them, working with them, and then achieving results. And that gets passed on to the next generation, and the next, and the next, and the next. And when that kind of lineage, so he's not talking about just any lineage, right? He's not talking about even like specific lineage. Oh, Kagyupas are good, Sakyapas not so good. No, he's not talking about that. When he talks about lineage here, we have to put aside all these labels. I'm Kagyupa, he's Gelugpa, or even, they are Zen people, they are Vipassana people. Lay aside these kind of sectarian labels. Here's talking about this heart connection of realizations that goes from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, and come down to us. He's saying we should treasure this and not, disrespect or look down on this kind of transmission, and then go around chasing what in his time, people talk about sky dharma, space dharma, treasure dharma, so like these dharmas that are these teachings, these new things that are discovered mysteriously. So yeah, it does resemble like what the dharmas are. And later this discussion, Sobish says, often people say Jidin Sumgon is against dharmas, against this Nyingmapa emphasis on dharmas, right? These treasure teachings. But Sobish makes the case, and I think it's very convincing, that no, he's not attacking the validity of dharmas. Right? Rather, he's saying, like, we have this tendency to be attracted to more magical, miraculous things, like a scroll falls from the sky, right? Let's say, right? I mean, realistically, right? Let's do this thought experiment. So here we are studying the Gongchik. Yeah? So this has a lineage, right? This has come down to us from a lineage, right? And then when you finish this morning and you walk out of your house, if you're allowed to do that, and it's beautiful, right? And especially here, last night we had a very strong storm that came through. But up in the mountains, we're quite usually safe from tornadoes. What was actually tornado in the flatlands further west, actually several cities and towns were experienced the destruction. By the time it came out to the mountains here, usually the tornado cannot sustain, usually. So up in Nashville, but nonetheless, last night was very strong. So some people are not joining us today because power line has been cut, so no electricity. Anyway, so let's say, now some of us, then after the storm, now after the teachings, you go out and the sun is out, everything is beautiful, so good, so nice, and then suddenly, right, something falls from the sky and lands on your feet. Like, oh, wow. And then you look, and there is, this brocade package, mysterious brocade wrap, package. And then you open up, and wow, it's in a script that you don't understand, but somehow you know the meaning. And it says, thus have I heard. Now, let's be honest, right? Are you going to be more excited about that or this? I'll be the first to admit, I'll be more excited about that. I'm going to call a quick, instant Zoom room, Hey, come on back in, I have received this sky dharma. Because it comes directly from the source. That is what this statement is addressing and say. In a way, it's saying, that means you don't trust the human experience. So this teaching, I think, here is saying, yes, as much as we say, samsaric beings are, confused, then in that sense, you say, oh, I want the direct from the source, with no confusion. But at the same time, we should not, downplay the specialty of the advantage of the authentic Dharma having been taken into the experience of real human beings with real struggles. And out of that struggle, right, realization is produced. And therefore, what is taught from the standpoint of those realizations take into consideration the struggles that we are likely to encounter as human beings as well. So when those teachings come down to us from a lineage, it's very profound. It's very amazing. And we should not underestimate. There's a lot more in this statement, and when we read, go through, you'll see all the different aspects of it. But let's see, if you have any comments or questions, response.
I think this is really inspiring from a mathematical perspective. In that, this is
Nathan, hold on. You want to face directly your microphone. Your voice is going in and out.
Yeah. Okay. Is it fine now?
Yes, it's much better right now. So don't move your head around. Just look.
Okay, I won't. The microphone in this computer is not very good.
Yeah.
So this point about the
Oh, I remember you shared this with me. Yeah, please share with everyone. Yes.
Yeah. So this is like a very well studied kind of thing, and in some places it's called the Lindy effect, which is basically that, you know, things that exist for us now that have been around for a long time have withstood kind of tests of time, essentially. So like volatility and stress. And so then, especially with things in the human experience, uh, yeah, it's this point is really inspiring to me because I've, you know, thought about that.
Say more about that.
Yeah, so the Lindy effect says that you can judge how long something is going to exist in the future based on how long it has existed already, or how long it's been valued already. So, for instance, we can compare uh, just with mundane kind of books, maybe. A book that has been valued and read for 200 years is much more likely to be around in 100 years than a book that is brand new on the bestseller list or something. So then, obviously, with teachings, this can go, I mean, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
But then there is the special aspect where if you have the assumption that, you know, you're getting it from someone who has the actual experience of that in terms of lineage,
Mm-hmm.
it's much more special.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just thought I'd share. Maybe I'll send the article or something.
Yeah, you can send it on WhatsApp, you know.
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
Yes, I would appreciate if another day, you know, going further on this chapter 6, you go deeper in what you mentioned about going on retreat and having to do so many mantras, or on a daily practice like ourselves. We have so many commitments that I have to spend 2 hours doing mantras, and you know what I mean? I mean, just to
Oh, yeah.
just to do my commitments and what I'm supposed to do. And then sometimes you get to a point where I say, oh, I wanted to do more of this, or more contemplation, or more meditation. And I spend 2 hours doing mantras or doing this sadhana.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really struggle for Jose and me, you know. It's part of.
The teacher says, take your time.
Although the teacher says, take your time, you don't have to do your non-draw in 3 months. You can take time, but then you want to rush and do it.
Yes.
You know, so.
Yeah, we'll see. What I will say right now is that it really depends a lot on who is mentoring you, what approach they are taking, if that approach is working for you. And having that is very helpful. Otherwise, if we have a lot of consultants, we have to be our own doctor, you know. But it's also cannot be the case that, oh, because this idea, right? Then you're like, oh, I need to find, you know, my doctor. When in fact, maybe that doctor actually won't work for you either, you know. So you also cannot just say, oh, I'm just going to have one doctor and not a whole bunch of consultants, you know. Because there's so many ways, you know, to kind of take the Dharma into your own experience. And some methods is like, you know, you just do it, you know. But it's not you just do it, you know. You do it, but you have a lot of trust, you know. Anyway, yes, I think we'll see, you know, through this. So chapter 6, the first line, in contrast to chapter 1, the first statement, you can see they are concern is a little different. And there's something to be said about. And so we might do this, which is that we go back and forth between chapter 1 and 6, because in the ancient text, right, these two chapters are interchangeable. So I think as we study this book, if we go back and forth between chapter 1 and 6, I think it will provide us a good balance. So back to the point in the chapter 6, then I remember in one instruction, one teacher said, he said, you know how the lineage tree, the lineage field, so at the very top, right, I mean, describing the Kagyu lineage field, at the very top is Vajradhara, and then Tilopa, Naropa, and so on and so forth. Then all the way down to your root Lama, also in the form of Vajradhara. So, so it said, you know, like that, and you might think, you know, oh, why don't I just, you know, go straight to the Vajradhara on top and receive the blessings, you know, in its most pristine and, you know, uncompromised way. Go to the Vajradhara on top. Why do I need the Vajradhara that is all the way down here, you know, 40 over or 50 over or whatever, right? The lineage. So this instruction says, actually, if you go to the Vajradhara at the very top, which of course in the end, the essence of that and the essence of this Vajradhara is no different. But it says that if you think, oh, let me go to the Vajradhara on top, it says that you will have no idea what to do with that blessing. Because you have no capacity yet, you know. You don't have the capacity of Tilopa to be face to face with Vajradhara. So the blessing that we need necessarily has to come from this lineage. And again, I want to emphasize this lineage. I'm not talking about the usual labels that we have, you know, Drigong Kagyu, Dupa Kagyu, you know, Kama Kagyu, Pelyu Ningma, you know, Tujum Ningma, Sakyapa. Those are more historical and then to some degree political, social labels. So one thing is, whenever we talk about lineage, right, in this material, in Gongchik, understand that it's related to what we call lineages now, but it's not that. It's the uninterrupted flow of experience, realization, then using religious language, blessings that can come down to us, or that we can plug ourselves into. So lineage in that sense. So then in that sense, then every practice that we do has a lineage, right? Because I learned it from someone who 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 learned it from someone. Going back to the source. That's the kind of lineage that we're talking about here. Good.
Thank you.
So speaking of lineage, one announcement. This Sunday, I've decided to make it or to make this available for anyone who is interested to receive or to participate, let's put it in this way, to participate in a virtual empowerment of Banashawari. I did that due to requests from Sanghas in Central America. So we did that this past Saturday, and maybe one of you, or two or three, in fact, from those Sanghas participated. And I think it was a special experience, it seems, for most people who participated. And so I will make this available for the English-speaking, so without translation, this Sunday. It will begin Asheville time, New York time, at 8 in the morning. We'll go to around 11 or so. I'm going to send out information first to this WhatsApp group, and it will require that you send an email to an address I'll give to you. I created a Gmail address specifically for this, and you will register that way. I don't want to make it, like, oh, willy-nilly, anyone who wants it, because then it kind of cheapens it. People come and go. So there are some requirements, that I list out in this message. Please look at that carefully if you can do it. And and even when I say if you can do it, it means you can do it to the best of your ability, because some of our circumstances makes it hard. But if you can, and you say in good faith, I can meet these requirements, then no need to worry too much anymore. Then you can just register and say, yes, I would like to participate. And then we'll send you the Zoom room information. This past weekend, there were 67, 68 people that participated in this. I don't know if any of you who participated want to share anything. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you want to say something about how it was different or might, inspire some other people to think about this. But quickly, I want to say, it's like, the question of like, and so by the way, His Holiness knows about this. He thinks it's a good idea. He said, oh, yeah, good. Basically, the feeling is like something is better than nothing. So I cannot say, that you will receive the empowerment through this way. You can or cannot. Because as one teacher said, when asked, can you receive empowerment through virtual experience? He said, well, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean? He said, I looked in the tantras. It doesn't say anything about the internet, he says. It says, there's no answer there. It doesn't say anything about the internet, So then he said, but, something is better than nothing, So he said, I cannot say that you definitely will receive, but I also cannot say that you cannot receive. So I am doing it in that spirit, like, I don't know. Even when you are in the same room, and someone's doing the empowerment, can you receive it? We have a Sangha member who kind of irritatingly sometimes will respond to questions like that. Can I, he will go, can you? You know, so in this case, you know, I would say that too. You know, if you ask, can one receive empowerment virtually? Well, the question I have is really, can you? I don't know. You have to tell me.
I had the good karma to be there on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
Thanks to you. And I would like to say that I have been through many empowerments, but you did so well explaining all the process. Like you guide us, explain, you know, you're a very good scholar and you explain everything in detail. So it kind of helped knowing what was happening exactly. And although it was distant, with Jose and I, we took the empowerment together and we said, we're going to put that aside. We are going to do our best to connect. And for example, for me, the part of the body, my head was about to explode. For Jose was the heart. He felt the warmth, and I didn't feel that part that much, but he was feeling all your energy through the deity, and it was very powerful, very powerful. And like I told you, we had a friend who is in ICU for 2 weeks. So I did like having empowerment in his name, and it felt so powerful that I felt like I was doing something for him. You know, I visualized him doing the empowerment. It was thank you for doing it. It was very powerful.
Sure. I can add on my end to say that definitely for me, I felt like I could focus more on what I am supposed to be doing. That just shows, you know, I'm not powerful enough yet, you know, to be in the midst of a whole room of distractions and to completely do what the Vajra Master is supposed to do. So I can tell you, like for me at least, you know, I can focus much better.
Thank you.
So anyway, I will send that information out through WhatsApp. And I said, we can share, you know, with other people, but I don't want it to be shared to groups. You share it with someone that you know personally, that you know, oh, they will be open to this, and they can do this, and it will be good for them. That's different. Just throwing it out there, oh, hey, world, hey, who wants to, you know? It's not very beneficial, you know, and I'm not interested in numbers, so to say. I just want to do, you know, little things that I can do to be helpful, to facilitate. So if you know other people, you don't need my permission, you can share with them and invite them to this. But just don't send it to a whole group of people. Like, you know, there's all these chat groups, like WeChat groups and WhatsApp group and Messenger groups, you know. Don't just share it to that. It's like, you know, not very useful. So anyway, we'll send you this information. And this is Sunday, this coming Sunday, Eastern Standard Time, New York time. It'll start at 8 a.m. So we meet again on Wednesday, yeah? And then this coming Thursday, we continue with the Lojong, and that is through Facebook, on Urban Dharma's Facebook live stream. We'll continue with the Lojong. So I'll see you on Wednesday for Guru Puja and Gongchik.
Thank you.
Take care.